Hey, this is John Monson with Rural Ruckus Radio and Podcast. And today we have another great guest, somebody I'm really excited to talk to, Jase Wagner, the CEO of Compeer Financial, my boss. And this is going to be fun because he shares the enthusiasm that I have and the passion that I have for rural America, especially investments and strategy going forward and all the legislative and policy issues that are related to it, and the team, you name it. And so this is going to be fun to kind of get into it with somebody who really knows a lot about it, has actively dedicated himself to it as a priority for an organization that I love and always will. And anyways, Jase, I'm just so happy you're here with me today. And thanks for joining the podcast.
Yeah, thanks, John. I'm really looking forward to our conversation. Yeah. Obviously, rural is the heartbeat of Compeer, the heartbeat of really where I grew up and what I want to have an impact on long run. So fun to talk to you.
This is your heartbeat. I love that. And, we started off, let's just go back a little bit in time, talk a little bit about how you came into the organization, because you're CEO today, but you had a little bit of a roadmap that you followed to get to this point. And it was kind of fun because I got a chance to see it the whole way through. It was a blast to be able to see what you brought to the organization and just how far we expanded our thinking under your leadership. So you started off with a different position in the beginning, correct?
Yeah. So I started with Compeer and I'd come out of the corporate finance world. And a lot of what I'd learned there is, one, how it works, right? How it works in urban world, how does it work in the finance world? And then bringing that back to an audience that didn't quite have that exposure. So a lot of it was telling the Compeer or AgStar or Farm Credit story. Yep. And that's I learned how to tell a story to an institutional investor and really helping others, whether it's an urban population, whether it's a rural population or institutions, or maybe even a small town bank. Like, how do you talk about Compeer and the importance of rural? And so that storytelling aspect was what I brought, some knowledge on that, like the nuts and bolts of how to bring capital to rural America. And that was really my initial job. I had to bring capital to rural America to help to support the growth of AgStar at the time.
Yep, that's right. And what I remember so well from those days, so we were working back at that time on farm service agency guarantees. Do you remember this?
Yeah.
And we were talking about how do we get this thing rolling, whatever. And I remember you kind of putting pen to paper really quickly and be able to determine, what does this actually mean to our client? What does it actually mean to the organization? What kind of benefit does it create? And then we started talking about 2002 Farm Bill and equity investments and how much they were needed in agriculture and how critical that would be under a new program that actually started in 2002 Farm Bill, but hadn't been acted on by anybody at the USDA until the year 2011 when you and I had a chance to go out to Washington, D.C. Talk a little bit more about that, because that was pretty fun.
Yeah, that was really fun. We had found a diamond in the rough out there and a kind of a very underutilized program, which happens occasionally within USDA or just particular with rural America. And so as we'd gone through our ways to have an impact, we find this program. You know how to work with USDA because of your background and that work. I understood a little bit of the institution side. And so together, and this is really important about investing in rural America, doing things together. We went to USDA, we talked to them, we talked to other people who are in rural areas trying to find capital, trying to make a difference. And they all needed a program like what we found. And so we took that to USDA and worked through the process. And, here we are. 12 years later, 14 years later, we got $1.5 billion investing in rural America through that program. It's an amazing accomplishment. We worked on this a long time ago. There's a lot of people who joined in that party, but $1.5 billion investing in rural America, and that is just a really amazing accomplishment to take a program that was dead and really revive it and make it something that's really meaningful. So it's fun to do.
Yeah, and what was in my mind at the time, and I have never forgotten, was we introduced a heat map.
Yep.
Do you remember this? You built it, and you shared it with what was called their capital markets team at the time, which was their leadership around rural development. And we shared that with them. You put it together fairly quickly to show where equity capital was needed, different stages of capital, what was in different forms of industry, where innovation was going to come from, how we invest to make it successful. It was eye-opening to them. And so we had a chance to be able to be asked, do we want to start a regional fund? And so we did. We said, well, we're willing to start something off. But then we headed out to Denver, got some partners together out of Agribank, CoBank, and we hired a fund manager and started the very first fund.
Yeah.
And what was so interesting to me was we had $154 million in the pot from all our different players with billions of dollars of needs in the pipeline for those few $154 million. That blew my mind. The heat map that you showed them was spot on. And it blew me away that, honestly, I think at that time I was beginning to understand sort of the what you brought to the table. It was not just specific to AgStar or the Farm Credit. It was really system changing. And that's what I think this is about today, is really talking about how to change a system. And fast forward now, there was a hearing that was done a few years ago regarding investing in rural America. And you came out with a new phrase, and it was called a Rural America Capital Team. Explain what that means.
Yeah, so the Rural America Capital Team is borrowed from a phrase that I've heard John say a lot. Rural development is a team sport. And I think as we think about building for the long run within rural America, we need some grounded in data, which a lot of it we have not produced or just kind of use. And so getting something like a heat map is a way to get data. And then when you use that data to tell a story, it's just a lot more compelling than somebody's opinion out in an area. And so it's really been fun to see and kind of use that pattern. How do we get data? How do we tell a story? And then how do we get that to have the impact that we really want? And it's just been a really interesting conversation to have over a long period of time of getting that those pieces together, which then allow you to have that long run impact.
Yeah, and so from there, what I can recall is we had a meeting up in Lakeville then, and you said, we really need some good data. We need some good research that's going to help guide better decision making, because we know what's happening in rural America, but the only way you can prove it is through good data.
Yep.
Now, data was not at that point my strength, but it quickly became a strength for me and a passion for me too. I began to see what you saw and how important it was because of the story that it told. And it was a clear story and it was a clear path. And we actually invested in some research to be able to understand what was going on in a way that was sort of agnostic, or just tell us the truth about what's needed and where it's needed, right?
Right.
And then we brought that to the Senate and to the House and showed it to them and so on. But it was pretty compelling, wasn't it? It was pretty important.
Yeah, it was really important because I think it spoke to everybody doing as best as they can still isn't going to cover the gap.
Right.
Right. And I think that's where you look at community banks and USDA and institutional investors, all these people investing in rural America, and we still weren't covering the gap. And I think we needed to prove that to ourselves as well, because we wanted to have an impact in a spot that's really needed the help. Yeah. And we kind of thought that it was there, but that gap was even bigger than what we thought, and it's continuing to grow. And I think that's what really is engaging to a lot of different people of once they see, everybody's doing all they can, we're still not covering it. So how do we do it different?
Right.
And that's the conversation we're increasingly having is let's think about how we do it different. And that's really fun, because then we can continue to engage that group that's already there and then build on that to really get and make that difference.
And this was really around infrastructure at that time when we started this whole thing off.
Yeah.
But what was interesting was that it really took, so status quo wasn't working is what we were learning.
Right.
Status quo meant that we're going to continue to expand the need and nobody's going to address it. So the average person on the street may not know that a hospital isn't getting built in their town because it was never there to start with, right?
Right.
You just walk away and never know the difference. But we now know how important it is, especially when we can see, for example, Mayo Hospital's closing in our territory. It's going to create it's kind of a healthcare desert in a certain way across a number of communities. And we're going to begin to see a lot of this happening. And it worries us. We're seeing it in elderly care as well. We're seeing it all over the place. And so these are big concerns. But what's interesting, so the Rural America Capital Team is what's needed to solve it, and you've identified that. But there's more to this, I think. And this is where I think the Rural Ruckus Radio wants to focus, and that's on more of the bold vision of the future. So it goes beyond rural infrastructure, doesn't it?
Yeah.
What's needed for rural communities? What other investments are needed that you see?
Yeah, so we see a really big combination of things. I think we've invested in some different areas on community development and how do you help people understand how to take that first step? Because that once you're in motion, it's easier to make adjustments to get to where you are. But a lot of communities, a lot of areas can't even figure out the way to take that first step. Are they going this way or that way? And giving them the confidence to go in a direction then allows them to build a coalition around that action, probably improve the ideas, they talk to more people, and then really accomplish more. But it's small business, it's manufacturing, it's housing, which is a big issue today, and affordable housing, and how do you have those kind of things come together to then create that vital community, which then supports a healthcare facility and really allows it to thrive because it can have the workers and the people that are there. The ecosystem and really this team thinking is what needs to continue to evolve in rural America and really in our urban environments as well. How do we work in things together to really create that flywheel, which creates a momentum, which then allows really good things to happen? Because we're seeing, some different things. I mean, the groundswell, we have a couple hospitals closed in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, and they got together and are now rebuilding or trying to rebuild that hospital and make it open so we don't have a desert, in healthcare. And that's amazing to me that the group would get together and kind of just make it happen. And that's what's so exciting about this is you do have that level of energy and understanding that's out there. And so how do we help catalyze that? And how do we help others understand it and catalyze that as well, right? Because Compeer can't do it all by ourselves. So how do we get others who are interested? How do we activate that work in different ways to create that? And I think that's, if you have RBICs and kind of that program investing in small businesses, you have other ways to use the community development, you're doing infrastructure yourself, like those are the ways that kind of create that that positive momentum. And we're trying to be in the middle of it and help people find the right people to help get that work done. Yeah.
And there's a lot to do here, but some people will say, they'll challenge back and say, this is just a play to get rid of banks or other partners and so on. So what's the answer to that?
Yeah, the answer is we need everybody to help. And we're not going to do it ourselves in total. We just want to be one of those catalytic providers for that. You see a lot of it in sustainable farming where you're trying to find people that are interested in creating an investment that helps get the wheel turning. That's a fair amount of what we're trying to do. We can't solve the $6 billion gap in funding across the U.S. Our farmers and ranchers is our farmer-owned cooperative. We don't have the capital to go do that. So we're going to have to partner in order to help fill that gap. And we want and really, really need community banks, credit unions, large regional banks, national banks, everybody to this party. And I think the more we have the good reps and show the good stories, the easier it is to get involved. And so we encourage people to get involved at the nitty gritty, the hard part at the beginning, like we are. But if they want to join later on, we're going to need that help too. And so we want everybody involved and everybody to get a share of this really strong vitality that's out there in rural America.
Yeah. Now, I have not been a part of Compeer for a year. It's gone fast. And I miss people. I miss this stuff. I miss talking to somebody as passionate as you about these things. Yep. I do. I miss that a lot. But what's changing? Where is the momentum going now over the last year? What's happened and where are we headed? How does it look to you?
Yeah. So I think there's headwinds, tailwinds. So as I think about the tailwinds, we have now built a really strong understanding of the need that we have in rural America, and we have momentum around bipartisanship around that need. And so I think historically, we had maybe pockets that were interested and maybe a onesie, twosie over here. It's united. We have 20 people on our bill, 10 and 10 co-sponsors across the spectrum. Senate and House, we're ready to rock. We have to get a farm bill is our mechanism, so we need to get action. So that's more of a headwind, is getting action in our government system in order to kind of accomplish many of these things that bipartisan agree on. So I know there's other things other than just our issues that are out there in rural, but we need to continue to do that. I think the other thing that's changed is we're getting voices. Beth Ford has been out there from Land O'Lakes, been much more active talking about rural America and the coming crisis there. We agree on a lot of things that she's talking about, but raising an awareness of what's going on in rural America is a key item. I think as a voting bloc, the rural America has been recognized as something that is important and is needed. And I think so. There's a lot of good things. I think other headwinds you got is just uncertainty. That uncertainty is kind of manifesting itself in different ways, whether it's lack of investment because I don't know what's going to happen, or trade type implications which impact some of the rural businesses more acutely. And so we're seeing kind of ups and downs, but I think in general the way I'm feeling about it is very optimistic, because I think the alignment of the interest, how we get there, is still a question, but everyone knows we need to get there. And that's a different thing than I think a little while ago.
So what you're seeing then, and I certainly recognize this when I was there, it's pretty bipartisan, isn't it?
Yeah.
This effort.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, what does the co-sponsorship look like so far in the Senate and the House? Pretty positive both ways?
Absolutely. Yeah. Very strong support. On the House side, where we have the bill, we don't have a marker bill in the Senate, but we have the bill. And, we went through a different Congress and we were able to get almost everybody back on, and we got new members joining from different parts of the country as well, which, the lead on the Democrat side is from North Carolina. Mm-hmm. And North Carolina has a lot of role as well. And there are really active sponsors there. And across Minnesota, Illinois, Wisconsin, we have people from, I think, Colorado. There's a gentleman that's on the bill. And so it's really, across the country, bipartisan support, understanding that this is a no-cost way to help rural America. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a real positive message. And I think others are looking for ways to do that. ACRE got passed within the Big Beautiful Bill for community banks. That's a way to help them to have more money to reinvest in rural America as well. We're hoping that money goes back into small businesses, back into farmers' pockets, which then they can reinvest as well. So there's different ways that the legislator is really helping. And other than the uncertainty aspect that kind of comes with some of that, it is a pretty positive momentum.
Yeah. We see that the president is pretty interested in farmers in rural America right now. We know that for a fact. We know that he views it as strong support for him, and so he's had their back in a number of different ways and so on. So maybe there can be some kind of momentum towards a farm bill ultimately. In fact, I was listening to a conversation he's having in a roundtable. Mm-hmm. With farmers and others, and this seemed to be pretty important. So something needs to begin to happen, I think, in that regard, and hopefully it will, and this will begin to move off the dime. But I do think that this has been an easy thing to be able to move on. Hopefully it'll operate exactly like that. So you've got these rural communities, now you've got infrastructure that you focused on. You're focusing on sort of the business attributes of the community. There are also entrepreneurs in these communities too.
Yeah.
And they're also in need of direction, coaching, money, technical assistance, you name it, ag and in rural communities. Are they a part of the plan? I mean, because I think they're probably a pretty big feature of your focus.
Yeah, so we are trying to activate in that area, mostly one, creating awareness and creating partnerships. So mm-hmm. we're not, from an eligibility perspective as the institution that we are and some other restrictions, we're not able to put money directly in, and we don't necessarily think that's always the highest need right now. Community banks play a really important role in rural America, and we want them to be there. Yeah. But how do we help these rural businesses, whether they're ag or not, trying to help find that way? And so we're investing in some work to create partnerships. We're creating a rural forum that's going to happen in September. We're really looking forward to bringing those voices together, helping build that awareness of what needs to happen, creating those connections, which creates the action, which creates the activity, and ultimately the vitality we're looking for. But small businesses are a huge part of the equation because they provide off-farm income for farmers. They also provide vitality for healthcare facilities and infrastructure that goes with it to make those investments happen and really make them pay off for a state or for a county or for whoever. They need those rural businesses in there. And so we're trying to help ways to activate that and continue to find ways either to fund them, to provide assistance, to provide support for, training for employees that might go in there. We're actively looking at trades and investing in that area as well. I know something you got started a while ago, which is starting to now kind of see some of those people get out into the communities and have an impact. So those are ways we have to kind of look at it from many different angles. And that's why you really need that rural capital team, is people have different levels of expertise that can help us identify it, help us fund it, help us activate it in a different way, and really we can help them connect it to other things that are going on, which can also benefit from that work. So that's a lot of what we see.
So by doing all this, you're investing in innovation in agriculture through our equity funding, rural business investment program. There's that. You've got a lot of partners involved with that, billions that are invested there through these partnerships, meeting a far greater need than there is money available, but that's growing, and you've been consistent about investing there. You've got infrastructure investments that you've been doing around rural healthcare and infrastructure there. You've been trying to sort of catalyze this investment and bringing the right kinds of skill sets and support for rural investments around businesses and emerging businesses and small business and all of that as well. But you do something else that I think is pretty interesting. You do corporate giving. Talk about that.
Yeah, corporate giving. When I came to AgStar and Compeer, it is one of the greatest things that I've seen. So we see a lot of businesses donate a certain amount for every shoe they sell or something like that. Compeer gives 1% of our earnings back in the form of many different things. And with your leadership and a little push from me, we were able to get a donor advised fund set up and be able to continue that giving really through any cycle. And our impact on whether you're looking at a signature facility that needs to get done that can create a lot of education and awareness, or whether you're doing fire halls, you're providing life-saving equipment for grain bins and those things, like we save lives. Every year, the equipment that we help those institutions buy or use helps save lives. And that's just such a fun thing to be involved with. It's so heartwarming to know that you can have an impact through your organization, and the commitment of our board of directors as well is just really strong to help support those scholarships for kids going to school, making an impact in their lives. Maybe they couldn't afford it, now they can. It's just such a big deal for us, and it's a way to give back. And our farm community in general is really generous with their time. They're really generous with their dollars. And so it's a nice way to kind of continue that as a corporate sponsor. Some are cutting back these days. We are not. We are really moving forward, want to invest as much as we can to help catalyze this long run vitality in rural America.
Yeah, which is what makes Compeer really special. When we talk about all the different ways that you go about this work. So we all know that we invest in farmers. We know that we invest in their goals and their future. We know that we invest in sharing crop insurance and perspectives there. It's a strategic organization with all of our farmers and communities, but these are just really big differentiators from really anybody else that I can think of. And so I used to always think of it as there's a really big bus, and there's a whole bunch of people that are in it that are having to work together. And we're not always driving the bus. But I used to say that I'm in the back and I'm probably yelling out directions from time to time. And I'm making sure that at least we're heading down the right road, hopefully. Do you see that you're driving that bus a little bit more now, or do you see that you're just part of that kind of that ride that's happening, or how are things coming together in your mind?
Yeah, it's a little bit of both. I think we are taking our turn, and I think in certain issues we are trying to be in that driver's seat. Yeah. And really, our vision and our connections and kind of how we're situated is part of it. But we are also still in the back, and we're yelling directions, and we're helping people, and we're creating community. Community in the back of the bus as well as part of that is, well, I'm here for healthcare, and I'm here for small business, and like you two are actually connected. And I'm here to build communities, infrastructure, broadband. You're like, yeah, you guys all need each other. So we're kind of the orchestrator in the back as yelling directions and then driving the bus, and that's part of that commitment that we have to not just be one small part. We're not sitting in 10A, right? We're in all parts of the bus, and we're all trying to make that happen. I think that's a really important part. Trying to activate as well. I'm on a different bus. I work with a group called MBOLD, which is a group of very large organizations here in Minnesota, and they're looking to connect protein, right? The future of protein and how those facilities can be built in rural America. We have an advantage here with Hormel in Austin and all the hog producers that we have. We have Cargill locally, we have CHS. We have all these people who are involved in protein in different ways, and we're trying to get them to connect, bring others from outside the country into the U.S. and help them be the catalyst, and have Minnesota be part of that hub, and have rural Minnesota in particular be a big part of that future as well. So trying to do things inside and outside the organization to bring that real high quality value out to rural America.
That's good. So last question I have. You changed the vision statement several years ago for Compeer. Help me understand a little bit more about why it was changed, and what's sort of the breadth of what you see in that vision statement now.
Yeah, so the vision is a world where agriculture and rural communities are dynamic, collaborative, and thriving. And we changed it to be, it's frankly not about us. This is about the world, right? So if this world can create a better overall economic environment for rural communities, and we changed it from rural America to rural communities because rural communities, there's just more grounded. Rural America is kind of this amorphous thing, but everybody knows a rural community, and they can feel really good about that part of it. And then agriculture is a part of that mix as well. rural communities need ag more than ag needs rural communities. And agriculture needs rural communities more than rural communities need ag. And so it's just a really important thing to think about. How do we help make that happen? How does that world produce a better outcome for all those who live here and, frankly, all those who live around the world? Because the low-cost food production that is produced here is exported around the world. The commodities, the products that we produce in rural America get exported around the world and have that impact. And I think it's just so exciting to think about how we can continue to drive that impact and really invest for that future. But we got to have it it's got to be a team sport. Yep. And we got to bring others along with us. And that's what's fun about Rural Ruckus, is trying to create that community that really builds that rural capital team and really helps us accomplish the goals we're looking for.
Well, what I think is important about what we're attempting to do here in today's conversation is ag has a voice. It does have a voice. It has many voices. Rural doesn't. That's interesting to me. It doesn't have enough of a voice. And that's why we do this show. It's really important. And one little feature of that change in the vision statement was really key to me. It doesn't say rural America, it says rural communities. It is about who you serve. It's not about a big marketplace. It's about who we serve, community by community. So thanks so much, Jase, for coming in today. I appreciate having you here. It's a lot of fun. I would love to go another half hour or more. But anyways, we'll shut her down here. Thank you so much again. And this is John Monson, Rural Ruckus Radio and Podcast, signing off. We'll talk to you next time.